If you are not taking this information that you are learning at these meetings and bringing them full circle within your practice, you need help. Because why are you attending these meetings to get the information if you don't have something in place to make it happen within your practice? It's just money not well spent. You're just going to be ending up networking and not bringing back any real meat to implement in your practice.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. And I'm talking to someone in the industry I've known for a very long time. We met actually at SCN. She was one of the contestants. She joined SCN the same year I did. And she has made a big presence in the industry. I'm talking about Brenda McNulty. So before we kind of introduce the episode, I wanted to thank the sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the Doc Sites, allowing me to come to your inbox every single week. Remember, at 5 a.m. on Friday mornings when we release our new episodes. So today's podcast will talk about taking the information that we receive at the various meetings that we attend and turning them into reality for your practice. I want to stop the I told them and they're not doing it mentality. We'll provide ways to show the why behind the ask. So our listeners will benefit with some action items that are easy fixes as well. So let me introduce Brenda before we begin. So Brenda is a dynamic force in the dental industry, boasting about 30 years of rich experiences that span both clinical and business domains. As the owner of DSO Facts, she has cemented her reputation as an expert in transforming dental practices through innovative training and accountability systems. By implementing systems that maximize individual strengths, Brenda consistently drives practices towards increased profitability and success. So please welcome to the Raving Patients Podcast, Brenda McNulty. Brenda, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such a thrill to be on your podcast.
So Brenda, obviously we've come across each other with various capacities. I mentioned SCN. There's other companies you've been with that we've worked together. I'm happy to have you on to talk about because you recently transitioned to your own company, DSO Facts. So why don't you kind of start off by just telling the audience kind of how you help dental practices?
Oh, it would be my pleasure. What I have found is many offices have really, really good intentions to take the information that they get at all of these different dental meetings and use it in their practice. But what they're lacking is an implementation plan and an accountability plan to make sure that that happens within their practice. And so many times I hear doctors say, I told them to do it this way. I told them to do it that way. But they just don't do it. And what we have found is they don't do it because it wasn't set up for success to begin with. Maybe they don't know the why behind the ask, or maybe they just did not create a plan to implement and then an accountability plan to make sure that that implementation is actually happening. So my job is to kind of act between the team members and the doctors to make sure that all of that wonderful content that they've received happens.
I'm curious, before we delve into a lot of the content, I know you talked about the mentality behind all this. How much does a role play in how much the doctor leads the team or the office manager is considered a leader in the office? I wonder how much that plays a role in actually the team actually doing it. Is the quality of the leader?
Yeah, that it's the quality of the leader, period, whether that is the office manager or the doctor. You know, sometimes when the doctor takes over that role, it can look more as a micromanager, and that's not the intent at all. So it's finding out that leadership style to make sure that when we are giving this guidance, we're not being a dictator. We're not being a transactional leader. We're being more of a transformational leader. We're explaining the reasons why we do it. And we don't just say, do this. We explain that there's a problem right now, and I have some solutions. How do you feel about these solutions? How do you think we can implement this? And what does accountability look like for this particular system that we're trying to implement? So it's not exactly having somebody micromanage at all. It's more so using that transformational leadership style and having that strong leader to do that. I've met many a doctor that doesn't really want to get involved. They just want the team to do it. So they really pawn all of that off to their practice administrators or their managers. And then I have others that really want to play that key position within that implementation process.
So do you have a preference? So I like to use my own experiences. Look, I haven't practiced in 18 months now. But I had a very small practice. I had a front desk person who took on some leadership, but the office manager in my mind was me. I was the one who had things implemented. I think I was a very good leader. Does it matter to you depending on the size of the practice? When should a dentist decide to just focus on dentistry and not focus on the leadership part and have someone as an office manager in the practice?
Well, that's interesting because I think it's different based on the personality of the doctor. If you have somebody that has a very strong personality like you that can handle it all and enjoys it, great, keep doing it. But if you don't enjoy it or you can't manage it, or maybe you're a leader that no one will follow, then it's time to really implement somebody in that role as the practice administrator. I don't like to have a whole bunch of jack of all trades, masters of none. So I would rather have somebody be a practice administrator that delegates and says, you know what, you are so good at filling the schedule. I'm going to have you be our scheduling coordinator. You are so good at collecting money. I'm going to have you be the AR coordinator. And then we meet together as a team and you report on all of those different areas. That can relieve some of the pressure off of the doctor or the practice administrator. So it kind of depends on the size of your practice, but more importantly, the personality of the leader and the guy in charge or girl in charge.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Those were two questions I had for you that we really didn't cover. So obviously, I think you'll agree that putting something in place requires a plan, an itinerary to where you want to go. So can you talk about why implementation plans are a must in a practice?
Well, because many times people will come back with the stupid questions. And so normally I say there are no stupid questions, but there are some stupid questions. And that's it. Oh, were we starting that today? Oh, I didn't know we were supposed to do it that way. Oh, I didn't know I was responsible for that. So the implementation plan says the who, what, why, when, how of what it is that we're going to do. So it's not just a matter of, okay, we're going to implement this software. It is on Monday, we are going to be doing this. This person's going to be in charge of this. This person's going to be in charge of that. This is the desired result. This is how we know whether or not it's going to be working. And everybody's going to play a role in this implementation. What questions do you have? I don't even ask, do you have any questions? Because people will automatically go, no, I don't. But instead I say, what questions do you have? And they'll come up with some really great ones like, okay, wait a second, I need to know, are we sending text messages at the same time as these emails, or how are we going to work that? And great questions. Let's work through that. Then we get to the end result. Okay, what obstacles do you foresee in this implementation? None. Wonderful. So as far as I know, everyone's on board with this. Go ahead and sign this piece of paper that we just outlined this beautiful design of this implementation. Everybody sign it. So there's no question that we know what we're going to be doing starting Monday morning. I find it works. It works.
Got it. So talk about accountability, because I think accountability, which we've kind of touched on a little bit, I think accountability is really important, because people, if they're not accountable, they don't get the job done. So you have to talk about accountability, and you must get it from everybody on the team. So can you touch a little bit on that as well?
Absolutely. Well, doctor, you're a parent. So if, let's say, your son came to you, or your son got in trouble at school, he wasn't turning in his homework, right? And you went to him and you said, what should the punishment be? The younger they are, the more severe that punishment is. Like, I shouldn't get dessert for a year. Like, oh, wow, that's a very severe punishment. Let's turn it back a little bit. I do the same thing with the team. Okay, so this is the implementation, but what should happen if you're not doing it? And I let them say, oh, well, maybe we should be written up. Maybe it should be this. Maybe it should be that. And so we decide, if somebody is voluntarily not implementing the plan that we just brilliantly created, this is what that's going to look like. But not only that, what tools are we going to use for this accountability? So we can go back and say, okay, now that we have these new scripts that we're going to be using for out-of-network verbal skills, the way that we're going to be checking for accountability is Each week, we're going to be listening to 10 phone calls, the recorded calls. Okay. We're going to be listening to each other's calls. We're going to be rating these calls. And when we find that somebody is not utilizing these verbal skills, then what do we do? And I don't make those decisions. We talk about it as a team because we're like, yeah, we all agreed to this. So if somebody's not doing it, this is what should happen. Of course, we have one person that is overseeing it all and making sure that the accountability plan is realistic, but it's not going to be, oh, you don't do it, you're fired. We really need to have something that's realistic in place. I find that when everybody knows what I hate to say punishment, but what the accountability plan looks like, they're more apt to follow the implementation plan. I don't want to be the bad guy. I also don't want to be a micromanager. So if they know ahead of time that 10 calls are going to be listened to every week, they're more likely to make the majority of their calls sound exactly the way that the implementation plan says that they should be sounding.
What is the best way to keep track of the performance or the results from what the implementation plan is intended to do? How do you recommend they make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing?
Well, it really does depend on the task. If it's a phone conversation that they should be using, we're going to be listening to those phone calls. I wouldn't put an implementation plan and an accountability plan in place for phone calls if I didn't have some way of monitoring it. So every single KPI in a dental office, every single system in a dental office has some sort of a way to monitor it, whether it's the spending of the budget in the back, or if it is those phone conversations, insurance verification, we can always monitor it in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes we have to get creative as to what that monitoring looks like. It might simply be somebody sitting right next to somebody to monitor those phone calls because we don't have any recorded phone calls available. So the monitoring, I've seen offices use dashboards. Absolutely love your sponsor dental intel. There's many different dashboards that are out there, but we can set goals and we can watch those monitors go up or down, and then we will know whether the accountability or that we will have a way to show accountability, and we can tell if it's been implemented.
Makes a lot of sense. One of my struggles as a owner of the dental practice, being from New York, it's the way I chose my words, I guess would be a great way to say that. Even now as someone who's not practicing, people think I raise my voice, I yell. I'm just loud. I talk fast, I'm loud. That's just my personality. So I think, and I hear it all the time dealing in the review space. I hear people say, in the reviews, the front desk person has tone, was rude, condescending, short. I mean, these are all things. So I think it's not only how you deliver it, but the choice of how you say it. It means a lot to the team as well. Am I correct in that?
Absolutely. I don't do well myself with somebody that just tells me what to do if I don't understand the why behind the ask. That's really big to me. If not, you're going to get the yeah, buts. Yeah, but why do we have to do it? We've been doing it this way for 10 years and it's been fine. Why are we doing it this way now? So if I bring it forward in a different way and say, hey guys, I've noticed recently that a lot of our out-of-network patients are not moving forward with appointments. So I thought maybe we could have a discussion on what words we can use in order to get those out-of-network patients into the practice. If there was a new technique that we could use to bring in those out-of-network patients, would you be willing to listen to it? And if they immediately say, no, I'm not, that tells you what their character is. And, how are they going to move forward in your practice if they're not willing to learn new information, right? So if I know I'm going to get a yeah, but I need to listen to it and find out what their hesitation is, because if they don't tell me what their hesitation is, then I can't speak to it and I can't move forward. So I really understand how some people like to just tell what to do, but that's not always going to be giving you the best outcome in the end if they don't know the why behind the ask.
Now, obviously, the way you ask it too, but also just when you implement a plan, the message that you portray is also a matter as well. So can you discuss some of them? I mean, there's so many different ways that you have to get your message across to not only your team, but your patients as well. So in the patient communication, in the software you're using, the science and the practice, can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that's a main focus of what I've had to implement everything.
Absolutely. So I love this. This happens almost every single day. Somebody will call me and go, man, do we have cancellations and no-shows? There are so many. And I'll say, I bet you in your practice, I would hear cancellations and reschedules multiple times. And they say, no, we don't say it. So I bet you somebody will hand a card to a patient and go, all right, I know this is 6 months in advance, but if for some reason you can't make it or you need to reschedule, just go ahead and give us a call and we can reschedule it, right? Instead of saying, Mrs. Jones, it's very important that we see you in February to monitor the bleeding on the lower right. Since my schedule fills up so fast, let's go ahead and make a reserved time for you that you know for sure you can honor. Would you prefer Tuesday at 2 or Thursday at 3 in February, right? Then we do it and say, thank you so much for committing to this appointment. We look forward to seeing you. It's going to be very important that you honor this, right? They have signs in the office. We need 48 hours notice. It's the same thing if they have a sign in the office that says if you're more than 15 minutes late, we won't be able to see you. If they're only going to be 5 minutes late, they're going to run through the Starbucks drive-through because they know they have 15 minutes. So we eliminate them and we actually use our advertisement and our words and all of our signage to say what we really need, not what we're going to accept. So I think that that is very important to look at the message that we're sending. I don't call and confirm appointments. I call to see what questions they have regarding the 1 hour that they've committed to with Dr. Smith on Thursday. What questions do you have? That way they understand that that's something that they need to honor, not that they can cancel or reschedule at that confirmation call. And I feel like implementing small changes, same amount of words, totally different result.
Got it. That makes a whole lot of sense. So, we're talking about different implementation plans, different ways to lead the team. So can you talk about the difference between getting consulting and training, or in this case, fractional training? I think, can you also just discuss the differences between those two? Because I think people would be confused because, there's coaches, there's consultants, there's trainers, there's all different terminology. Can you talk about the difference between those?
Absolutely. So I've been a consultant for many, many years and absolutely love every consultant out there. I feel like everyone can benefit from a consultant. Where consultants really strive is if you have that strong leadership team that can take that information and run with it. That would be ideal. Me as a fractional training officer, what I do is I get up there, I train on the information, and then I stay as part of the practice. You get me for a fraction of my time to help with that implementation and accountability. So I am an active participant in the meetings. I will help hold the team accountable. I will hold those leadership meetings and say, let's look at these reports. Let's listen to these phone calls together. So for a fraction of my time, I am basically an employee of the practice. As a consultant, I gave you information that was highly valuable that you could see a huge return on investment on, but I was counting on you to do the implementation and accountability. Versus with fractional training, I am actively participating in that implementation and accountability.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. So talk to me about where you see the overall effect of doing these things in the practice. So somebody calls you up and says, hey, I want to implement some things. This is, what do you end up as the result? How do you measure the ROI of implementing these things? That's what I'm curious about.
Well, measuring the ROI is different depending on the system. If it's getting more out of network patients, that's pretty easy to be able to judge by looking at your marketing and by watching your monitors. Where the hard part comes is morale. Hey, I need to do this for the morale of my practice. How do we measure morale? Really more with turnover and the performance of the team members that we have. Do they have a vested interest in the success of the practice? Are they making sure that the next appointment is scheduled? Are they asking for reviews? And are those reviews positive? So it depends on the actual system. I can tell you when I love ROI and I look at it. And when I start to work with a team, I'm going to look at all of their KPIs and I'm going to say, yes, here's an area that you will definitely see an ROI by implementing these particular systems. And I'm going to keep an eye on it. So for instance, one of the easy low-hanging fruit in general practices is, what is your fluoride percentage? If you're only sitting at 20% fluoride percentage, and I have some techniques that we can implement that can get you higher, you're going to see an ROI from hiring a fractional training officer, right? But if you're already sitting really high on all of these numbers, it very well could just be peace of mind of the doctor. They may not like holding the team members accountable. I hear this all the time. I'm completely non-confrontational. I'm a good dentist, but I'm not a good leader. Well, it would be really hard to hire somebody full-time as a leader for your practice and really see a return on investment. So that peace of mind is something that you really can't put a price tag on.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And I think you have to recognize, one, that you need help. I think you recognize that your practice can use some new ways to, enhance the performance of the team. So I think to know this, how do you recognize that you may need to do all these things or add a new implementation plan into the practice? People are listening to this. People ask me all the time, how do I know I need a coach? How do I know I need a trainer? How do I know I need to go get some extra training to enhance my practice, to grow my practice? How does someone recognize that? Because I think that's a difficult thing for someone to do. So I think you need to know where you are now and where you want to be, I guess, would be the way to do it. So can you touch base on that as well?
Absolutely. Well, if you don't have a dashboard in this day and age, that's ridiculous. You need to have a dashboard. You need to know exactly where you are now, and then you need to set goals for in the future, realistic, smart goals. And if you personally don't think that you have the time, energy, or the talents to get your team there, it's time to get a coach or a fractional training officer or a consultant. The other piece is maybe you don't know. You're stagnant in your dental practice and you have no idea where your potentials lie. Have somebody take an outside look at all of your reports, see what you're doing now, and let you know what the potential is for your practice. It might be simply taking a look at your schedule and going, I don't really think you're optimizing your schedule. We can do it this way. And always looking to, you're attending these meetings, right? You go there for a reason. You go there to learn. But if you are not taking this information that you are learning at these meetings and bringing them full circle within your practice, you need help. Because why are you attending these meetings to get the information if you don't have something in place to make it happen within your practice? It's money not well spent. You're just going to be ending up networking and not bringing back any real meat to implement in your practice.
Makes a whole lot of sense. So I'm curious, is there anything else that you want to discuss that we haven't discussed? I feel like we've kind of went over a wide range of topics here, but before we move to the Q&A, I wanted to ask if there's anything else that you wanted to discuss.
One thing, the team that you have right now may not be the team in the future. By having implementation plans and accountability plans, you're going to see who has a vested interest in your success and not in their own success. I have met many a dentist that says, boy, Stacy is so sweet, bless her heart. But, she just doesn't want to do what I want to do. But I love her. That's great that you love her. It's great that you like her personality, and that's fantastic. But is she in the right seat on the bus at the right time and going in the right direction that you really need her to go to? So having that third party come in and be able to tell you, yeah, she is sweet, she is kind, she is nice, but you need something different now. You may have to recognize that. I'm not saying that people get removed. I'm simply saying that you may have to take a deep look into your practice.
That makes a whole lot of sense. That really does. So let's segue into my lightning round Q&A. For those that have not heard the podcast before, this is a fun little exercise I go through. I have a deck of cards. It's actually on the phone now. It used to be an actual deck. Now they've made an app. It's called Pod Decks, and it comes up with questions to ask the guests. And this, I focus on the business side of it, which is called the hustle. So first question, what characteristics or skills are most important for leaders?
Great question. I love that. So characteristics and skills of great leader is empathy, action. You got to be able to action things. And the third I would say would be somebody who's a visionary.
Got it. Do you keep a journal and does it help you?
Absolutely keep a journal every single day. It does help me. I can't imagine my life without it.
Great. What have you given up on that you wish you never had?
Spanish. I'm not very good at Spanish. I really wish I was, especially since I'm going to be taking a vacation where I should be speaking Spanish.
What is one skill or trait that you feel is imperative to being successful?
Oh, faith. Absolutely faith. Whatever faith you want to have, I do feel like you need faith to be successful.
How do you capture or keep track of ideas? Do you keep a notebook? Do you have voice memos on your phone? How do you do it?
I have a notebook and I put voice memos on my phone because most of them happen in the middle of the night. These ideas come or when I'm in the shower. So I say, hey, Siri, and I make notes of all those things.
One of the questions I ask sometimes and hasn't come up yet is, what type of shower ideas you get? That's really funny that you mentioned the shower. What are 3 adjectives that describe your strengths?
I am an action person. I take action and I make sure that I get things done. My strength is the support for my family, whether that comes from financial support sometimes or whether that's the faith support. And the third strength that I have is empathy. I've been in their shoes, whether that's as a dental assistant, as an office manager, as a consultant, even as an owner, I've been in their shoes.
Got it. Who would you love to collaborate with and what would you love to collaborate on?
I would say let's do Steven Spielberg on a movie. Let's do that. Let's collaborate on a movie in the life and times of Dr. Len. How about that?
What have you learned from the most successful person you know?
That hard work without faith and goals isn't going to get you anywhere. You need to have your faith and you need to have goals as to where you're going to go next with that hard work.
Let's see. Do you have a hard time telling people no?
Absolutely not. Unless it's for a volunteer activity. I have sucker written on my forehead for volunteering. But other than that, I have no problem. Now, I do say it in a very nice way.
So it's funny you said that about being sucker. You know, I get a lot of people reaching out to me for various reasons. And it's funny because they always say they want to pick my brain. And I've learned that pick my brain, they want free advice. So I have a hard time saying no to that because I feel like that's what I do. So a couple more questions here. What is one thing that doesn't add value to your life, but you still do it?
Okay. This is going to make me sound really bad, but Naked and Afraid. I love that show. I watch it all the time. And for some reason, I think I could be on it. But as soon as I walk barefoot and I step on a pebble, game over. So it doesn't add value to my life, but I still do it. I still watch it.
Yes. Do you have a favorite business podcast?
There are so many. It would be really hard to pick one. And it varies. I think a lot of the times when I have the time to listen to a podcast, I listen to more things that I can turn off my business brain than turning it on. So I love true crime things.
Got it. Okay. Last question. What is one subscription, could be business or personal, that you cannot live without?
Probably Calendly right now. I live by my calendar and I use it every single day. So that would be it.
That's great. That's great. You answered those really well. So thank you. So Brenda, how can people find out how you can help them? How do they reach out to you if they want some advice? They want to pick your brain? What's the best way?
Well, straight from my website. You can find me on all the social media channels too, but my website is dsofacts.net. And just to be clear, I work with many DSOs, but I also work with private practices. It's all about a partnership and what the needs are for the practice. You can do a contact me on there, but I am on all the social medias as well. So you can find me there. You can send me an email at brenda@dsofacts.net. And that's facts like 2024 facts, FACTS, not FAX. So you can find me there.
Thank you for clarifying that. I was going to actually say that. It's not facts, FAX, it's FACTS. That's great. Brenda,
Boy, we just dated ourselves.
Yes, we did.
we dated ourselves.
Nobody uses the fax machine anymore. So, Brenda, you were great. This is great information. Guys, if you like the podcast, please reach out to Brenda if you want some advice, some help. You want to talk to her about consulting with her. If you think a colleague could be using the information we provided, please give the information to the colleague about the Raving Patients podcast. We come out Fridays at 5 a.m. We are in the middle of season 7, so we've got a lot of episodes to catch up on. Review us, like us, subscribe to us, all really helpful. Help promote us. I would really appreciate it. You can always tag the Raving Patients podcast or myself, Dr. Len Tao. We just finished an event in Scottsdale, Arizona called Supercharge Your Dental Practice. It was the second year we had it. We're doing year 3 back in South Florida in Fort Lauderdale, which is September 26th and 27th. You can check out superchargeyourdentalpractice.com for information about the 2025 event in South Florida. And Brenda, you were amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today. And as I end every single podcast, remember, your reputation matters. Until the next episode, Brenda, thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
Thank you for having me.